Psalm 26 of David.
Vindicate me, O Lord, for I have walked in my integrity, and I have trusted in the Lord without wavering. Prove me, O Lord, and try me. Test my heart and my mind. For your steadfast love is before my eyes, and I walk in your faithfulness. I do not sit with men of falsehood, nor do I consort with hypocrites. I hate the assembly of evildoers, and I will not sit with the wicked. I wash my hands in innocence, and go around your altar, O Lord, proclaiming thanksgiving aloud, and telling all your wondrous deeds. O Lord, I love the habitation of your house, and the place where your glory dwells. Do not sweep my soul away with sinners, nor my life with bloodthirsty men, and whose hands are evil devices, and whose right hands are full of bribes. But as for me, I shall walk in my integrity. Redeem me, and be gracious to me. My foot stands on level ground. In the great assembly, I will bless the Lord.
Matthew 26. When Jesus had finished all these sayings, he said to his disciples,
You know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be delivered up to be crucified.
Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, whose name was Caiaphas, and plotted together in order to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said,
Not during the feast, lest there be an uproar among the people.
Now, when Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came up to him with an alabaster flask of very expensive ointment, and she poured it on his head as he reclined at table. And when the disciples saw it, they were indignant, saying,
Why this waste? For this could have been sold for a large sum and given to the poor.
But Jesus, aware of this, said to them,
Why do you trouble the woman? For she has done a beautiful thing to me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. In pouring this ointment on my body, she has done it to prepare me for burial. Truly I say to you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her.
Then one of the 12, whose name was Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said,
What will you give me if I deliver him over to you?
And they paid him 30 pieces of silver, and from that moment he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now, on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying,
Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?
He said,
Go into the city to a certain man and say to him, The teacher says, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.
And the disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he reclined at table with the 12. And as they were eating, he said,
Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me.
And they were very sorrowful and began to say to him one after another,
Is it I, Lord?
He answered,
He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born.
Judas, who would betray him, answered,
Is it I, Rabbi?
He said to him,
You have said so.
Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, and gave it to the disciples, and said,
Take, eat. This is my body.
And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying,
Drink of it, all of you. For this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom.
And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, You will all fall away because of me this night, for it is written,
I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee."
Peter answered him,
Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away.
Jesus said to him,
"Truly I tell you, this very night, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
Peter said to him,
Even if I must die with you, I will not deny you.
And all the disciples said the same. Then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples,
Sit here while I go over there and pray."
And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them,
"My soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me."
And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying,
"My Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will."
And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter,
"So could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak."
Again, for the 2nd time, he went away and prayed,
"My Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done."
And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So, leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them,
"Sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying,
The one who will kiss is the man. Seize him.
And he came up to Jesus at once and said,
Greetings, Rabbi.
And he kissed him. Jesus said to him,
"Friend, do what you came to do."
Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him,
"Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the Scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so?"
At that hour Jesus said to the crowds,
"Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the Scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled."
Then all the disciples left him and fled. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. And Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said,
This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days.
And the high priest stood up and said,
Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you?
But Jesus remained silent. And the high priest said to him,
I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God.
Jesus said to him,
"You have said so, but I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven."
Then the high priest tore his robes and said,
He has uttered blasphemy! What further witnesses do we need? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment?
They answered,
He deserves death!
Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying,
Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck you?
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and a servant girl came up to him and said,
You also were with Jesus the Galilean.
But he denied it before them all, saying,
I do not know what you mean.
And when he went out to the entrance, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders,
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
And again he denied it, with an oath.
I do not know the man.
After a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter,
Certainly you too are one of them, for your accent betrays you.
Then he began to invoke a curse on himself, and to swear.
I do not know the man.
And immediately the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the saying of Jesus,
Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times.
And he went out and wept bitterly.
Exodus 1. These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt. Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them. Now there arose a new king over Egypt, who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people,
Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply, and, if war breaks out, they join our enemies, and fight against us, and escape from the land.
Therefore they set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Raamses. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. So they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves, and made their lives bitter with hard service, in mortar and brick, and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other Puah,
When you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it is a daughter, she shall live.
But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives, and said to them,
Why have you done this, and let the male children live?
The midwives said to Pharaoh,
Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous, and give birth before the midwife comes to them.
So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people,
Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live.
Exodus 2. Now a man from the house of Levi went and took as his wife a Levite woman. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine child, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she took for him a basket made of bulrushes, and daubed it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it, and placed it among the reeds by the riverbank. And his sister stood at a distance to know what would be done to him. Now the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river, while her young women walked beside the river. She saw the basket among the reeds and sent her servant woman, and she took it. When she opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the baby was crying. She took pity on him and said,
"This is one of the Hebrews' children."
Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter,
"Shall I go and call you a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?"
And Pharaoh's daughter said to her,
"Go."
So the girl went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to her,
"Take this child away and nurse him for me, and I will give you your wages."
So the woman took the child and nursed him. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses.
"Because,"
she said,
"I drew him out of the water."
One day, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and looked on their burdens. And he saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, behold, 2 Hebrews were struggling together. And he said to the man in the wrong,
"Why do you strike your companion?"
He answered,
"Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?"
Then Moses was afraid and thought,
"Surely the thing is known."
When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and stayed in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. The shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and saved them and watered their flock. When they came home to their father Reuel, he said,
"How is it that you have come home so soon today?"
They said,
"An Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and even drew water for us, and watered the flock."
He said to his daughters,
"Then where is he? Why have you left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread."
And Moses was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah. She gave birth to a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said,
"I have been a sojourner in a foreign land."
During those many days the king of Egypt died, and the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob. God saw the people of Israel, and God knew